The Yuba City Boys, also called the Yuba City Five, are the story of five guys who all lived in or near Yuba City, California. Four of them had learning disabilities. The fifth guy had schizophrenia. One of the guys with learning disabilities and the guy who was schizophrenic had been in the Army. They were both discharged. One guy for having a learning disability, the other guy for being schizophrenic. They were all part of a program called the Gateway Program for people with disabilities. They played on a basketball team called the Gateway Gators associated with that program. They were all big basketball fans. Yuba City, California is located in this position. Down here we have San Francisco. Over here we have Lake Tahoe, Reno, and Nevada. Up here we have Chico, California. And in this area we have Plumas National Forest. This bar is about 10 miles to give a sense of scale. On the night of February 24th, 1978, they went to attend a college basketball game in the town of Chico, California, also the location of a prison. The game ended at about 10 p.m. They went to a convenience store. They bought some milk, some other drinks, some snack foods. They did not return home. The next day, Saturday, they were scheduled to play in a basketball tournament, which they did not want to miss. Their families reported them missing. At first, there was no sign as to where they had gone. The Plumas National Forest figures prominently in the story. In the United States, national forests are lands owned by the federal government for multi-use. National parks are supposed to be maintained in a pristine condition, but national forests are multi-use, meaning they can have recreation, but they can also have logging, mining, even oil and gas extraction if the proper permits are issued. The National Forest Service is part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture in the U.S. government. 1 or 2 days before February 24th, the Forest Service attempted Snowcat, which is a tracked vehicle designed for use in snow. This one had a plow at the front end of it. They were going to plow a road up to a work camp being used by forest workers. The purpose of this was to remove snow from the roofs of the trailers that were forming the camp. If snow accumulates on roofs, particularly flat roofs, there is the danger of the snow caving the roof in. What the forest workers were doing in this camp is never mentioned in any of the stories. But there was a work camp, and Forest Service workers were using it in the summer. They drove the snowcats to the camp, removed the snow from the roofs, and drove back the way they came. Plumas National Forest is in a mountainous area. It has a higher elevation, and in winter, snow accumulates. Typically in Northern California, at areas at sea level, there is no snow accumulation. In the mountains, it's colder, and snow does accumulate. On the day of February 24th, there was a man who drove his Volkswagen Beetle up the road into Plumas National Forest. He was apparently checking the conditions for a trip for himself, his wife, and his daughter, which may have involved skiing. He may have owned or rented a cabin in Plumas National Forest. Driving back out at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, one of his tires became stuck in the snow and began spinning. He got out to push his car and felt a searing pain and tightening in his chest. He believed he was having a heart attack. He went into his car, closed the door, left the engine running with the heater to try to keep warm. On Sunday, a Forest Service ranger in Plumas National Forest on routine patrol found a car stopped on the road. Checking the car, it turned out to be a car owned by one of the five missing people. There was a short investigation by the police. They found that one of the rear tires had become stuck and spun in the snow. They were able to start the engine by hot wiring it. It had about a quarter of a tank of fuel, and they were able to drive it off the mountain without any difficulties. When the details of the five missing guys were published, the guy in the Volkswagen told a story of what he remembered happened that night. He said he wasn't sure if some of what he remembered weren't hallucinations. He said that at some point a pickup truck pulled up in back of his car, and another car perhaps in back of that, and that five people walked down the road, including a woman with a baby. None of them tried to help. Sounds like an hallucination to me. Later in the night, he said he heard a strange whistling noise. When he got out of his car, he saw headlights illuminating part of the road ahead of him. He called out for help. The whistling noise stopped. The headlights were turned off. He believed the people were deliberately avoiding and ignoring him. So he went back into his car and laid down again. He said that at some point he remembered flashlights being shined through the windows of his car. In the early hours of February 25th, the Volkswagen ran out of gas. At this point, the guy's heart had apparently stabilized enough that he was able to walk. He walked some 8 miles down the road to an inn or tavern where he had stopped on his way into the park. He may have known the owner somewhat. Told the owner, woke him up. The owner apparently lived at his inn. The guy woke him up, told him that he had had a heart attack, and the owner of the inn drove the guy to his house, where the Volkswagen's owner's wife drove him to a hospital where doctors confirmed that he had a mild heart attack. One of the details of the story is that no one ever mentions what happened to the Volkswagen. Obviously, either a tow truck was sent up to recover the car, or someone went up with a can of gasoline, put some gas in the tank, and drove it off. There is no mention if whoever went up for the Volkswagen saw any of the cars stopped or parked on the road. The guy said that when he started walking down the road from his Volkswagen, he passed a parked car, which was the same car the highway patrol found on Sunday. On Sunday, after finding the car, they couldn't begin a search. It snowed heavily on Sunday afternoon. Nothing was seen of them several more months. On June 4th, a group of people riding motorcycles rode into the work camp that the Forest Service had, and they smelled rotting flesh. The largest trailer, which is described as a 60-foot long one, appeared to be where the scent was coming from. A window on the front of it had been broken. The door was unlocked. When they went inside, they found a body on a bed. Most accounts say that there were 8 sheets over it. The body was one of the people who had a learning disability. Accounts say that inside the trailer, they found 12 cans of Army rations, which had been opened with an Army can opener. Outside in the shed, there were stacked boxes of additional Army rations, which had not been used. The person found on the bed had weighed about 200 pounds when he disappeared. Most accounts say he lost at least 80 pounds through starvation. He also had significant beard growth, which would indicate that he lived probably for at least 2 months. So February 24th, 2 months, March, April, he probably would have died at the end of April or the beginning of May before the snow melted. In addition, inside the trailer, there was a cabinet with a box of freeze-dried meals, which had not been eaten, even though the person in the trailer had starved to death. As they did further searches, they found the body of the driver of the car and a person who was his close friend on either side of the road at 8 miles back from the trailer towards where their cars had gotten stuck. The driver of the car was found between the road and a creek. His friend was found on the opposite side of the road, off the road, in the trees. Trailers are reported to be 19 and a half miles from the place where their car was stuck in the snow. The car was stuck in the snow, but there were 5 guys, and they should have been able to push it out. The body of a 4th guy was found, who was the close friend of the guy whose body was found in the trailer. The guy who was schizophrenic, his body was never found. The guy whose body was found in the trailer, his shoes were missing. In their place were rubber-soled, basketball-style shoes worn by the guy who was schizophrenic. The guy who was found in the trailer also had severely frostbitten feet. The question that was asked was, why were they driving up that road, which is known as the Orville-Quincy Highway? One suggestion was that one of them knew somebody who lived in Forbestown and they got lost. Another theory was they were being chased up the road by someone. I would suggest that the simplest explanation is usually the best. They were driving to Quincy. A possible reason for why they would drive to Quincy is evident if one looks at a map of Quincy. This is Quincy. This location here is the headquarters of the Plumas National Forest. Look at the map. You will also notice that in this area is indicated CHP. CHP stands for California Highway Patrol. There's a California Highway Patrol office in Quincy. I think the most likely explanation is they were driving south from Chico. Something happened that at least the driver of the car felt to be reported to the Highway Patrol. So they drove to the Highway Patrol office in Oroville. The Oroville office of the California Highway Patrol is in this location, on 3rd Street, alongside Highway 70, just short of the Home Depot when approaching from the south. For some reason, it's not indicated on the map. This is the current webpage for the Oroville California Highway Patrol office. You will notice that it closes at 5 p.m. on Friday. This would have been well after 10 o'clock at night on Friday. The driver of the car did not use phones. If he needed to make a phone call, he would get someone else to make it for him. They drive to the office. The California Highway Patrol doesn't shut down at 5 p.m. It works 24 hours a day. There may have been people in the back room or doing something else, but the front door was locked and they had no way to enter. At this point, there is a question that I do not know the answer to, and that is, at the office door or near the office door, was there a list of other Highway Patrol offices in the area of Oroville? And was Quincy named on that list? They go to Oroville. The Highway Patrol office is closed there. They can't imagine that all of the Highway Patrol offices are closed, so they decide to try Quincy. Wondering, this is the Quincy Highway Patrol webpage. They also close at 5 o'clock on Fridays, but they wouldn't have known that. And if they thought there must be some office open somewhere, they might have tried Quincy. The reason why they might have tried Quincy is that as they were driving away, since they entered from the north, they would be driving south, they might have seen some sign indicating the Oroville-Quincy Highway. They're in Oroville, they see Quincy, they remember that Quincy is another Highway Patrol office, they decide to go there. They think it's a short distance. The Oroville-Quincy Highway sounds like the natural way to go from Oroville to Quincy. Actually, this is the road they took, the Oroville-Quincy Highway. This is the road they should have taken, California Highway 70. Highway 70 looks up, turns around, and actually enters Quincy from the north, the mountain road, so it's windy. Highway 70 kept plowed all winter. The Orville-Quincy Highway is closed in winter. They didn't know that. They drive up the road thinking it's going to be a fairly short trip to Quincy. Their car gets stuck in the snow. The guy in the Volkswagen did not hear whistling. He heard a car tire spinning in the snow. Car tire spinning in the snow sounds something like in his state, his heart fibrillating, perhaps lapsing in and out of consciousness, he thought he was hearing something like. He gets out of his car. He sees headlights. He calls out. They turn off their engine and headlights. He thinks they're ignoring him. They're not. They're paying attention to him. They're in their car. They're trying to get out of the snow. They hear someone's voice. In order to hear it more clearly, turn off the engine. When they turn off their engine, they turn off their headlights so they don't run down their battery. They go looking for the guy.
Having a heart attack. Let me help you.
This was the people shining flashlights in the windows of his car. Again, he was probably lapsing in and out of consciousness with his heart fibrillating. They go back to their car. Have to understand, it was a 1969 Mercury Montego. American cars built in the 1960s and 1970s were total garbage. Some of them performed fairly well. A lot of them had horrendous problems. Wouldn't start when it was hot, wouldn't start when it was cold, wouldn't start when it was raining. Some cars wouldn't start if the engine was stopped. So if you drove someplace, you have to wait for the engine to cool down before you could start the engine again. Then, of course, you had things like windows not rolling up, windows not rolling down, doors not closing properly. They were built so badly that the Japanese almost wiped out the U.S. auto industry. Cold. The engine is hot. Put the key in the ignition, and the engine doesn't start. The engine was hot. The air was cold. A piece of metal may have expanded. Another piece of metal may have contracted. That might have jammed them, or the electrical contacts might have moved apart. This kind of stuff happened all the time with American cars. When the police came, the car was in the light of day, it was a little bit warmer, all the pieces of the car were at the same temperature, you put in the key and it started. Or in their case, they hotwired the car to start. Yeah, those kind of stories happened all the time with American cars. People couldn't start their car, they'd go away, they'd come back the next day, car would start. There's nothing surprising in that. But now, they can't start their car. There's a guy in the Volkswagen who's having a heart attack. They decide they're going to walk to Quincy to get help. The road's been plowed. They don't realize the road's only been plowed to a work camp. They also have no idea of how far Quincy is. It's over 30 miles, probably about 35 miles or so. They thought it was a lot closer than that. They start walking. Walking on snow is not the same as walking on a hard surface. Every step you take, the snow compresses. You lose energy. It's also a mountain road, so they're walking uphill, they're walking downhill. It's not straight and level. And the guy who was eventually found dead had severely frostbitten feet. The body of the guy was found, allegedly 19 and a half miles from the place where the car is stalled. When people are walking in one direction, they tend to be very reluctant to turn around and go back the way they came. It feels like lost effort. So the further they went, the more determined they were to get to Quincy, but they had no idea what the distances were. To walk that distance, 8 hours, would be impressive. It could easily take them over 12 hours. They would have started probably somewhere around 11 o'clock at night or a little bit later. They might not have gotten to those trailers until noon, 12 o'clock, noon, on Saturday. Where the Inn Tavern was would most likely be down in this area. I'm not sure where. There's stores, there's houses in this area. So taking an approximate start and going 8 miles, they were somewhere up in this location when the car got stuck in the snow. 19.5 miles from here puts you somewhere out in this area. I've included this map just to show that the Orville-Quincy Highway is also called Bucks Lake Road. They're the same road. They're about 15 miles probably from Quincy. They break open a window. They go into the trailer. They need help. Now, they have a guy with severely frostbitten feet. There was the guy who was having a heart attack back in the car. They can't get through the road. The road hasn't been plowed. There's fairly deep snow. They can't walk through deep snow. They were dressed for mild weather. They were not dressed for winter. Two of the guys, the driver and his friend, decide they have to go back for help. They got about 8 miles, which would have put them probably roughly in this area. Depending on when they left the trailer, it could have been afternoon. A few hours later, by the time they got 8 miles, it might well have been dark. They were suffering from hypothermia. They weren't dressed for the weather. They would also have been severely dehydrated. When working or walking outside in winter, the body has to burn calories just to stay warm. It uses a lot of water. As they were walking, the friend of the driver collapsed. A combination of hypothermia, dehydration, maybe leg cramps. The driver takes him and moves him into the trees so he's not lying down in the snow. The driver would have been choking with thirst. He went over to the creek to get a drink of water. He might have also tried to get water for his friend to see if he can revive him. He may have stayed with him and made several trips back and forth to the creek to get water for his friend and to drink some water himself. At some point, he was overcome by hypothermia. He also collapsed, and they both died. Cans of food they found were old sea rations. These were the rations the U.S. Army used from 1940 to the mid 70s. They came in a cardboard box. 2 cans of food with a packet of instant coffee, a packet of sugar, a packet of artificial creamer. The Army for years included cigarettes and matches. There are reports that matches were found in the trailer. Were they the Army issue matches? It also included salt and pepper, a roll of toilet paper, and a box with a couple of pieces of chewing gum. It also included toothpicks, which the military referred to as interdental stimulators. The Army also threw in one of their can openers in about every 4 boxes of rations. The can openers were considered to be fairly disposable. The Army can opener was 2 stamped pieces of metal joined with a hinge so they could fold up and be compact. They had gotten the sea ration cans. They should have found cardboard boxes and at least the wrappings from the coffee and the cigarettes and the sugar. There's no reports that they did, and I suspect they weren't there. They didn't get the sea rations from the shed. The forest workers did. The forest workers either ran out of cigarettes, or they ran out of coffee, or they got bored. So they took some of the boxes out, they drank the coffee, they smoked the cigarettes, they chewed the gum. They were not going to eat the Army rations. So they left the cans of the Army rations and the can opener in the kitchenette area in the trailer. Forest workers took the cardboard boxes and the package wrappings with them when they took their trash out for the last time. As for the freeze-dried meals, you don't know what they are. A freeze-dried meal is just a plastic package. If you put them in a box together and you don't know what you're looking at, just a bunch of plastic packages. If they had found the cabinet and looked into them, they might have thought it was a box of cleaning supplies. The other question is, where was this cabinet? Because if the cabinet was in the front room with the broken window, they weren't going to go into it. They were never going to go into that room. All it would do is make the rest of the trailer much colder. They ate the sea ration cans. 3 guys, 12 cans of sea rations. The food wouldn't have lasted very long. No help came. The guy with schizophrenia left the 2 guys who were friends in the trailer. The one guy to take care of his friend with the severely frostbitten feet. He uses the shoes for the guy with the frostbitten feet because he thinks they're better for walking in. They were leather shoes. There is deep snow on the ground. His chance of getting very far were pretty small, and I don't know if his schizophrenia in any way got involved in it, but his body has never been found. 2 friends are left in the trailer, starving to death, using snow for drinking water. Eventually, the one guy dies. When the snow melts, the other guy attempts to leave. They found some Forest Service blankets away from the trailer. He might have been trying to carry them. He would have been severely emaciated from starvation, and he had very little chance of getting any distance, and so he too died. His body was found fairly close to the trailer. Some people suggested that they could have started a fire with the paperback books and the matches to keep warm. Starting a fire in an enclosed space is not a good idea. It can very easily lead to carbon monoxide poisoning. You can also set the building on fire. I don't think there's any mystery. Some bad timing, misunderstanding some highway signs, trying to get to some place that's already closed. I don't think there's any mystery at all.